Today, we are diving deep into a market that, well, it presents one of the most compelling contradictions in global finance: Australian iGaming.
Mm-hmm.
You hear the figures about Australia, and you immediately think, gold rush. I mean, consider this. Annual player losses nationwide exceed AUD 24 billion.
Just staggering numbers.
And on a per capita basis, Australians lose AUD 1,555 every year. That's one of the highest per-person gambling losses in the entire world. It really sounds like an operator's dream.
But here's the massive twist, right?
Yeah.
And the entire reason for this deep dive. Despite that huge consumer appetite and, well, that level of spending, our comprehensive source analysis rates the Australian market as a challenging market entry.
Challenging. What score did it get?
It gets slapped with an attractiveness score of just 4.1 out of 10.
Wow. 4.1?
Yeah. So how do you reconcile, a population spending that much with a rating that basically tells most operators to just stay home?
That is the central paradox we really need to crack for you today. The mission here is to figure out what specific hurdles turn this high-stakes environment into, frankly, a logistical and financial nightmare.
Right.
We'll focus on three key areas. First, the baffling regulatory asymmetry. What exactly is banned and what is sort of begrudgingly allowed?
And then second, the metrics of the actual customer who is high value, very digitally mature.
And finally, the overwhelming financial challenges. We're talking everything from the triple tax trap to acquisition costs that redefine the term astronomical.
Yeah, those costs are something else.
Okay, let's start at the foundation, which is messy. Australia uses a dual regulatory system, and this creates friction right away.
It does. You've got the federal government handling the online side, mostly through the Interactive Gambling Act of 2001.
Okay, the IGA 2001.
But then the individual states and territories, they keep control over everything land-based. Licensing, running the physical venues, pokies, all that.
And that 2001 federal legislation, that's the key hurdle online.
Absolutely. It's fascinating. It creates this massive firewall. The core rule, crystal clear. Online casino gaming, I think slots, roulette, blackjack, poker, any live dealer games is strictly prohibited for any operator serving Australian residents.
Strictly prohibited. So what does that mean in practice for an operator?
Well, if you're an international operator, that immediately cuts off roughly 50% of the revenue streams you'd rely on in basically every other liberalized market globally. Half your product is just gone online.
50%. Just illegal digitally.
Huh.
So if online casino is completely out, what is actually legal for operators to offer through apps and websites?
It's really restricted. You're limited to licensed pre-match, sports betting, race wagering, and lotteries.
Okay.
But even within those legal channels, the rules can be rigid, almost at the point of absurdity sometimes. Take in-play sports betting.
Right. Betting after the game starts.
Yeah. Digital in-play betting is illegal under the IGA. But operators found a way around it.
Oh.
They direct customers to place those bets via old-school telephone betting channels.
Telephone. I remember reading that. Why does placing a bet over the phone suddenly make it legal? Seems odd.
It really highlights maybe the age and rigidity of the 2001 Act. Regulators seem to view the telephone channel as non-digital, like a human-mediated transaction.
Ah, so it sidesteps the interactive part of the act.
Technically, yes. It's not captured by the prohibition on digital interaction for in-play. It's a bizarre workaround, honestly, but it just underscores how tight the constraints really are in the digital space.
And if operators licensed or, offshore try to push those boundaries, what happens?
Well, enforcement is aggressive. The federal regulator, ACMA, the Australian Communications and Media Authority, they seem serious about zero tolerance.
How serious?
They actively target offshore sites offering illegal casino games. We saw figures like between October and December 2024 alone, ACMA referred 75 websites for mandatory IST blocking.
75 sites in just 3 months. They're busy.
And this isn't just about catching the illegal offshore guys. They hit licensed entities hard, too, if they slip up. Look at the penalties. Tabcorp, a major license player, recently got fined AUD 4.6 million for compliance failures. And the casino sector sees massive penalties, too. The Star Sydney's casino license, still suspended until at least March 2025 after a huge AUD 15 million fine for various breaches.
15 million, wow.
It tells you, even if you are licensed and trying to follow the rules, the financial risks of getting it wrong are just immense.
Okay, so this level of strictness in the federal online domain, banning slots, blocking sites, massive fines, you could argue it makes sense if the main goal is harm minimization. But then it seems to exist in stark contrast to the state-level land-based market. What's the reality there?
The reality is profound asymmetry. While online is locked down tight, Australia operates 76% of the world's pub and club poker machines. Pookies, as everyone calls them.
76% of the world's in pubs and clubs.
That's the figure. And these electronic gaming machines, they're widely considered the highest harm gambling product, and they are absolutely everywhere. Player losses just from pokies alone hit AUD 12 billion in one financial year.
$12 billion just lost on physical machines, while online roulette is completely banned. That's quite the contrast.
Exactly. And we're seeing very slow movement to address this. Victoria, for example, is bringing in reforms, reducing the max deposit on machines from AUD 1,000 down to AUD 100.
That sounds significant.
It is, but that doesn't even kick in until December 2025. It just illustrates that the most lucrative, arguably highest harm physical product is allowed to proliferate, while digital offerings that might compete are aggressively banned. It's a really complex political and economic situation, deeply tied up in state revenue streams.
Okay, so the regulatory environment is, well, brutal and highly restrictive, especially online. But despite all those restrictions, operators are still fighting tooth and nail to be here. What makes the Australian customer so valuable they're willing to walk through that minefield? Let's shift focus now to the users themselves.
Right. Well, they are high value because they are proven, prolific spenders and incredibly digitally ready. Market penetration is already huge, 70.6%, which represents about 19 million active users.
19 million.
But the single most compelling number for operators, it's the average revenue per user, ARPU, projected at an exceptional USD 809.94 for 2025.
Okay, $809 per user. Can you put that in context? How does that compare?
That is significantly higher than you'd see in most mature European markets. It shows the spending isn't just widespread, it's deep. People are spending a lot individually.
And what's driving that willingness to spend so much?
Well, there's a really powerful incentive. Gambling winnings are generally not taxed for recreational players.
No tax on winnings?
But for the average person, no. In most other places, winnings get hit with various taxes. But in Australia, the consumer keeps it all tax-free. That dramatically enhances the incentive to participate.
That tax-free status sounds fantastic for the consumer, obviously. But does the sheer volume of that spending really compensate for the extreme regulatory costs we just talked about and, I guess, the operating costs we're about to get into?
Not entirely, no. And that's the crux of the problem. But it does explain the foundational incentive for the operator to even try. They know the player is highly motivated to bet.
And they can reach them easily.
Very easily. Because the audience is incredibly digitally mature, internet penetration is 97.1%, smartphone penetration is right up there at 97%. You're dealing with an almost universally connected population.
And crucially, the Australian gambler is mobile first, right? Which is key for speed and access these days.
Absolutely. Our sources show that 75% of online gambling happens via mobile devices.
Boy, a quarter.
And for the younger demographics, that climbs even higher, maybe up to 85% or more. So if an operator can't deliver a really world-class, seamless mobile experience, well, they might as well not even show up.
Mobile is everything then.
Pretty much. And we also have some great behavioral insights that should guide any operator thinking about entering this space.
Like what?
Activity is heavily concentrated on the weekends. About 70% of the weekly betting volume happens between Friday and Sunday.
Makes sense, aligning with major sports events.
Exactly. And the daily peak time is definitely evenings, roughly 7:00 p.m. to 11:00 p.m.
That kind of concentration must mean peak traffic moments are incredibly intense. Requires huge server capacity, I imagine.
Definitely. Huge spikes. Now, what about loyalty? Are these high-spending customers loyal to just one brand?
Good question. Are they?
That's actually a key warning sign in the data. Customers show really high responsiveness to promotional offers, think 60 to 70% utilization.
Meaning they'll switch for a good deal.
Precisely. Loyalty is described as moderate. The average player holds 2.8 accounts.
Almost 3 accounts per person.
Yeah. They're savvy, they shop around, they know the odds, they chase the bonuses. High spenders, yes, but also very flighty, not easily retained.
Okay, let's unpack this then and get to the core financial reason for that, frankly. Devastating 4.1 out of 10 attractiveness score. We've established there are high-value, digitally ready customers, but the barriers to actually making a profit seem monumental. This is where we talk about the big financial hurdles, starting with what our sources call the triple taps trap.
Yeah, this tax structure is perhaps the single most prohibitive element. Taxation is complex, mainly because it's handled at the state level, not federal, which adds logistical complexity right off the bat.
Okay.
But the primary hurdle is the point of consumption tax, or POC tax. This ranges from 8% to 15% of net wagering revenue.
8 to 15%.
Yeah.
And that depends on.
It's levied based on the specific state where the customer is physically located when they place the bet.
Wow, okay. So an operator has to track customer location state by state, calculate different rates, and pay accordingly. That sounds like a headache, but that's just the first layer of this trap.
Correct. That's layer one. You then layer that state-level POC tax on top of the standard 30% corporate income tax that businesses pay.
30% corporate tax. Standard enough.
Yes, but when you stack them, if you look at the math, our source material explicitly warns that the total effective tax rate reaches a staggering 50 to 60% of gross gaming revenue.
Now, hold on. 50 to 60% of gross revenue.
That's what the analysis indicates, GGR.
So 60% of every dollar wagered minus winnings is gone before you pay for a single employee, a single server, any marketing at all. That sounds genuinely untenable. Can you walk me through the impact? If an operator makes, say, $100 in GGR in Australia versus somewhere else like Malta.
Oh, it's night and day. Absolutely night and day. In a standard offshore or maybe a lightly regulated European jurisdiction, an operator might face an effective tax rate closer to, say, 10%, maybe 20% of GGR in some places.
Okay, so they keep $80 or $90 out of that $100 GGR.
Right, to cover all their operating expenses, marketing, acquisition, and hopefully make a profit. In Australia, if you hit that 60% effective tax rate, you're left with just $40 from the same $100 GGR.
$40.
You've effectively subsidized the state government massively before you've paid for any of your operational costs. This is exactly why the sources call the market prohibitive. It feels like it's designed to extract maximum revenue for the states, leaving absolutely minimal margin for the operator.
Okay, so if the tax itself doesn't completely suffocate the business model, the cost of actually reaching those customers finishes the job. Let's talk about customer acquisition costs, Cap.
Yeah, the SEC figures are eye-watering.
Our sources cite ranges from AUD 300 all the way up to AUD 800 per customer.
That's roughly USD 200 to 540.
To put that in perspective, in most other highly competitive but maybe less constrained markets, you might see a CAC of, what, $100? Maybe $250? Why is the Australian number so impossibly high, AUD 800?
It seems to be a perfect storm, really. It's created by that high tax rate crashing into intense market saturation and critically severe marketing constraints.
Saturation. How many players are there?
You have over 170 licensed betting apps, all fighting for a finite audience who, as we just mentioned, are only moderately loyal and actively shop around.
Right.
So the cost of standing out even slightly in that noise is just enormous.
And just as CAC reaches these, frankly, unsustainable heights, regulators are making it even harder to advertise and harder for customers to fund their accounts. It feels like they're choking off the funnel even further.
Absolutely. The regulatory squeeze is tightening in real time. On advertising, you've got broadcast restrictions now banning gambling ads during live sports, starting 5 minutes before, ending 5 minutes after the event.
During specific times.
Yeah, between 5:00 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. Peak viewing times, essentially. And further comprehensive bans are widely anticipated based on government recommendations, like the Murphy Report. So you have to spend more money to reach fewer, potentially less effective eyeballs.
And the payment methods ban, that hit in mid-2024. That must have been devastating for operators.
It was a huge hit, yeah. Credit cards and digital currencies, think cryptocurrency, were completely banned for online wagering transactions.
Banned entirely.
Yep. Eliminated two extremely popular, very convenient deposit methods just like that. Operators are now forced to rely much more heavily on debit cards and instant bank transfers, things like PayID and OSCO.
Which adds friction for the customer.
Exactly, adds friction to the funding process. This likely increases churn and just makes life harder for the operator who, remember, might have already paid up to AUD 800 just to acquire that customer in the first place.
So, okay, when you combine the total ban on online casino products, the aggressive enforcement environment, the massive tax rate that eats up 50, maybe 60% of your gross revenue, a CAC that can cost you up to AUD 800 per user, and now severe limits on how you advertise and how customers can even pay, the final verdict seems pretty chilling.
It is. Market entry requires not just significant capital, but almost institutional-level patience. The source analysis suggests you need a bare minimum of AUD 10 million in capital just to get started properly.
10 million minimum.
And a realistic 5-year horizon just to potentially achieve ROI. If you don't have incredibly deep pockets and an immense tolerance for regulatory risk and change, this is likely a market to avoid. And that, fundamentally, is why it scored that low 4.1 out of 10.
That really wraps up our deep dive into Australia's deceptively challenging iGaming sector. I think the core takeaway for you listening is this. Australia definitely has highly profitable, high-spending customers, no doubt about that. But they're locked behind this kind of triple barrier, secured by really restrictive product rules, aggressive federal enforcement, and a frankly punishing fiscal environment defined by extreme taxes and astronomical acquisition costs.
And maybe if we connect this to the bigger picture, just as a final thought, what's really fascinating here is the sheer regulatory asymmetry we talked about. We've seen that authorities rigorously block online casino access. They impose these crushing 60% taxes on licensed online sports betting, you could argue, in the name of control and revenue collection.
Right.
Yet simultaneously, they allowed the widespread proliferation of what many consider the highest harm gambling product, those physical electronic gaming machines, the pokies in pubs and clubs right across the country. So this really raises an important question for you to maybe consider. Is the system designed primarily for harm minimization across the board? Or is it fundamentally structured, perhaps unintentionally or intentionally, to protect existing, highly lucrative land-based revenue streams that significantly benefit state treasuries?
A truly profound question. It really highlights the complex political and economic currents throwing beneath the glossy facade of the Australian gambling market. We hope this deep dive has been a useful shortcut to understanding the high stakes and perhaps more importantly, the very high barriers involved. Until next time,